kids. Welcome to the Capital Life Podcast. I am your host, Abby Pagud. This is where we talk about all the things that life brings, the good, the bad, and of course, the healthy. And today's episode is called Against All Odds, Breaking Through the Weight of Limitation. And it's an episode of Keeping It Real with Real People. And I have an amazing guest for you today. This is Justin Smith. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Capital Life, Justin.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. I love the energy. I'm hoping it rubs off on me.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny though, because it's like once I get into mode, I don't know what it is with my theme music that my developers did, but it totally gets me in the groove, and I'm like, okay, woohoo, let's go.
That was a
And the
great
work,
intro. I liked it. I was watching. I was like, wow, looks really good.
thanks, I really appreciate that. I try to aim to please, but the funny thing is that I find that it is best that when we're dealing with some of the subjects that we're talking about, especially when we're talking about traumas, we're talking about all of our experiences. It is nitty gritty. It is painful. It can be gruesome. It can be freaking messy. I say it's kind of like birth and it's like death. It's messy and it's a little bit of gross, like it's in between. But we got to make it a little bit more lively and fun, because if we don't come together, we don't share the stories, we're not creating that empowerment. We're not creating that liveliness, because, it's a life experience. We got to be able to be open and talking about it.
Oh, of course. And you can't just live in trauma all the time. You have to make, lemonades out of the lemons. So I'm a big proponent of that. And as you saw from Cray, I took a very humorous, light approach to it because humor is the best medicine, in my opinion. It really just makes everything a little bit easier to deal with.
Yeah, 100%.
This episode of The Capital Life is brought to you by Blake Wealth Management. Feel confident that you are on the right path to living the retirement you deserve by checking out Blake Wealth Management. Eric and his team are committed to assisting and creating tax-efficient retirement planning for women, whether you are single, by choice, divorced, widowed, or just looking to prepare for your future. Blake Wealth Management will take you through the steps to create your Simply Retirement Roadmap, and it doesn't stop there. They even have started the Simply Retirement Podcast to support women on their road to retirement journey. So go and check them out at blakewealthmanagement.com, and don't wait another day to get yourself on the path to financial retiree freedom. Let's face it, the world moves fast. Your growth and healing deserve a space that moves with you. That's why we started the Kapitol Community, a place for people who want to understand themselves more deeply and stay connected to their evolution. Each month, we explore the emotional and energetic pulse many of us are navigating, helping life make a little bit more sense. Inside the community, you'll also find guided meditations, reflections, and wellness insights that help you reconnect with your body and steady your mind. We bring in new voices and conversations that expand how we see ourselves, our health, and the world around us. And don't forget Soul Talks with Abby, where we open the wisdom window and explore real experiences together. Want to learn more about the Kapitol Community? Visit capitalhealth.com and explore the place where growth keeps unfolding. At just $26 a month, join the Kapitol Community, where wisdom grounds you and awareness helps you rise. Please like, share, and rate us on whatever platform you're listening. It's how we start to really spread the message of good in the world that needs it so much right now. If you find this helpful or insightful, don't forget to connect with us on Facebook and YouTube at Kapitol Health. That's Kapitol Health. Also, visit us at capitalhealth.com and subscribe to our newsletter and get wicked awesome updates.
So for our guests, I want our audience to know a little bit about you, our guests, because what is so important about you and what you've done is you talk about making lemonade out of the lemons that you were dealt. You have literally ended up creating an app to help people so that people can at least be able to identify red flags, traumas, even possibly like mental health conditions that a partner may be expressing or having so that you don't get into the depth or complexity unless you're like wanting, willing, and choosing to, instead of being hit by a bus, kind of like you had. Can you explain a little bit? Let's first talk about a little bit about the experience. Let's start with the experience, and then we'll get everyone all revved up to hear more about the app. Okay.
Sounds good. That's usually what people like to hear the most. Makes a good story. I mean, there's a movie that was created that has a similar plot line called Gone Girl that's based on a book. And that's what happened to me. I had a partner of 8 years that I thought I was in a very connected, relationship marriage with. And then one day I woke up and it was a mirage. Like this person didn't love me. All the decisions that had these easy excuses as to why she did them. Once I started researching other stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, these dots are all connected, and this was a big plan. And I lost my wits because, as anyone, if you're ripped out of your life of 8 years and realize that it's all a lie, it's a tough pill to swallow. And so I decided to check myself into a trauma treatment center called All Points North, which is in Colorado. It's one of the top PTSD trauma centers. And while I was there, I was trying to analyze what the heck happened. Here was a woman that I loved, deep down inside, truly, and I thought loved me. But then there was a string of decisions that really made no sense, except for unless she was trying to cause me to have a breakdown. And so through trying to figure out what happened, I started really diving into signs and symptoms of different mental health disorders and
Mhm.
just trying to diagnose her, for a lack of a better term, to understand what,
Well, it's
how someone
rational
could simply
sense, right?
yeah,
Like
because
you're
I
trying to
needed
make
objective
rational
data.
sense about it, right? You're trying to
Yeah, and
when we go through different things and we're not understanding, a lot of us, especially when you're coming from a good-hearted nature, it's not like you're trying to project out onto an individual to like label them or to figure it out. It's like it's trying to make logical sense of what happened. And also I feel like too, an evaluation of, you know if I can you can understand where your accountability starts and where it ends in it, like in the involvement, I would say, because then you can understand, like, you want to be able to get to a place of, okay, this is what I was responsible for, this is the part that I'm really confused by. Okay, I'm trying to starting to put pieces together of understanding where they might be coming from and where they may not have done healing, or even be an awareness themselves of where they're at, because that's we're all at different places in our healing process, in our healing journey. And hopefully, we hope that at some point the other party does the work like we're doing the work, but that's not always the case. And sometimes we're a step ahead of them, and then you're solo with
yeah,
it.
yeah, I would say my struggle was that I was being gaslit so much by my partner that the making logical sense out of it was me reorienting myself to reality. Because you have someone feeding you information that's her, then you have my parents feeding me information that is their opinion, and none of this is based on reality. So it really required some deep diving and soul searching within myself to understand what my mistakes were in the relationship. So yeah, that's what started me working on Cray was investigating myself, investigating my partner, and trying to get an understanding of what happened, and then trying to come up with the tools that would have kept it from happening had I had a tool set in my pocket. And that's really what Cray ended up becoming, was a comprehensive tool set for evaluating your partners.
Yeah. So how did you end up, like, what were some of the red flags that showed up in the relationship, that you finally started to discover, which once you went to All Point?
Yeah, I would say the one that really stuck out to me was I had a really hard time understanding how someone who everyone thought was nice could do such mean things to me. And
Mm.
that's when I came to a realization that there's a difference between nice and kind. Those are two different words, and they have much different meanings, but they're usually used interchangeably. Nice is just doing something nice for someone. Kind is when you do something nice for someone, but you suffer in the process. So like if I went and I bought a bunch of food for the homeless, I had to do something, I paid money and then I'm going and giving it to them, expecting nothing in return. That's kind.
Yeah.
Taking a dirty shirt I'm wearing and giving it to a homeless guy without a shirt, that could be nice. Someone could perceive that as nice, but it's not nice. It's not kind.
Oh no, I totally know what you're talking about because I even have one particular person in my extended family that she's very friendly, but nice is not anything close. Like and I've noticed also within some of the behaviors, it's like, okay, when kindness is expressed, it's usually because there's some kind of reward system or some kind of promoting ego, like an ego boost behind it, right? Like if I go to a gas station and I end up giving a homeless person $20 just because, right? Like, I mean, my husband struggled a long time with his PTSD. I'm like, we both are like, oh my gosh, there's so many different variables that could have gone wrong with his healing process, to the point where even if he was not willing and courageous enough to have done the work that he has done, I mean, he could have easily been the homeless man on the street that was ranting. And so I have a very sore spot for people that are in those places, because you really don't know where they come from. You don't know their story. And, like, but at the same time, when I do something, I don't come home and be like, hey, honey, I just gave a homeless guy $20. Like, there's not it's just, you do something because you're compelled to do that. That is called compassion. That is called kindness. You're not looking for a reward out of it. You just do it because it's the right thing to do, and that's, to me, is integrity. Like, it is part all wrapped into integrity. So I love the fact that you are able to differentiate between the two of those things, because not a lot of people realize that there is a significant difference. And when people do discuss that, they call it semantics. They're like, oh, that's just semantics of changing the definition. It's like, no, actually, there is a clear, distinct line between it. And one is more of action, and the other is grace. So I love the fact that you realize that. Please continue with
Yeah,
why was she so not kind?
I think what I have come to, this is my opinion. I'm not a psychologist, so I think what it
It's
was
okay, I
was
was raised by one.
I was too. But I think she learned that she could virtue signal to cover up what a terrible person she was.
Mm,
And so she used to use virtue signaling to distract everyone from all the other stuff that she was doing. I
okay.
mean, this is a woman who all of a sudden cared about, doing nice things in a very open way that people could see her doing. Look, I'm going to visit my nephew because I'm the good aunt that visits him at school, and just these. But, this is the same woman who poisoned my kids for 2 months while I was in treatment, and used that opportunity to destroy my reputation instead of apologizing to the larger family for blowing up the marriage and ruining the family dynamic.
Or even
Like,
explaining why you were in treatment in the first place, to give them the first lesson that they should have as children, to hold compassion for someone when they're at their lowest point, which is,
yeah,
it's hard to do the right thing, but it also is great opportunity to be able to teach that to others, like, and being able to find a way to teach that to others. Because I know with my children, it's like, I very much try to put my ego aside, or any of those hurt feelings, and really try to hit middle ground, because the fact of the matter is, those children are shared property. Like, they're
hmm,
shared property. It's not just one person you're sharing them with. You're sharing them with their friends. You're sharing them with other family members. You're sharing them with the world. And sharing sucks sometimes, especially when you love your children so much. But the difference is coming to a place of where you're not strangle holding them, to, like, you're not owning your children, because they're only with us temporarily. You don't get to keep them forever. And then when they go out into that world, they have to be able to function. If you didn't teach them how to be compassionate humans, then they just become another version of you in the world. And then where's that going to get them? Like, don't you want them to have less suffrage than you've experienced in your life, you know? So it mind boggles me how you were at one of your worst points, one of your worst lows in your life, and instead of being met with grace and compassion, as I'm assuming that you definitely were with the care that you were receiving from the facility, but the fact that you weren't even being able to get that from your children, that must have been heartbreaking.
You know something? If you're listening to these conversations and thinking, yeah, I want more spaces like this in my life, that's exactly why we built the Kapitol community. It's where we keep the conversations going, exploring the emotional and energetic pulse of life, sharing tools for growth, bringing in new perspectives, and opening up the wisdom window during Soul Talks with Abby. If that sounds like your kind of space, you can learn more about it at capitolhealth.com. It's the place where growth keeps unfolding. At just $26 a month, come join the Kapitol community, where wisdom grounds you and awareness helps you rise.
Dude, I received no compassion from anyone in my family during this is what made it so brutally just destructive to me and why I had to rebuild from scratch because I lost my wife, I lost my two kids, I lost my parents, my sisters, their husbands, all of it due to this woman and her creating this character that everyone bought into. And still to this day, everyone believes that she's that person. Doesn't matter that I found a profile of her on a sugar dating website that she had for 4 years during our relationship. No one wants to believe that that's really who she is. Um, and it's unfortunate because now these people are getting harmed by her. I am luckily out of the situation and divorced now. And so there's some protection from her, but these people are still getting manipulated by her, unfortunately, which is really sad.
Is she starting to have some of like the mirror reflections of her own behavior coming back at her, or is that not
I
circled
I
around
don't know
yet?
because I'm not in communication with her at all. I try to avoid it because she plays these games to try and bait me into a response or, a
Mm,
reaction. She puts temporary tattoos of unicorns on my son who's 4 years old. Or she'll
mm,
send him with like a pink stuffed animal that's a girl stuffed animal. Or she only plays him girl shows like Super Kitties and I forget what some of the other ones were. So she does all
okay.
these little things to try and instigate a reaction, and I try and just block all of that out now because it's better to be in my own life and living in my own world and not buying into this distorted reality that she lives in.
Right. Can you share with the audience what the ages of your children are so that they get like a good ballpark figure viewpoint of what's going on here?
Yeah, so my oldest child is 19. She's in college at the moment. I had full custody of her and my middle child, who's now 15. I had full custody for 4 years leading up to this rupture in the marriage. And then, wouldn't you know it, wife number two reaches out to wife number one, convinces her to move back to town and try and get custody of my middle child from me. So it's just been
Mm,
literally someone leaving my world, lighting everything on fire as they leave to try and leave as much of a mess as possible because I decided I didn't want to be married to someone who had no values or moral compass.
yeah. Well, and also, I mean, even just trying to create a conversation around what the moral values are or what you're trying to instill into your children because, it's not just about having the difference of it. It's more of like being able to have the conversation so that you can meet middle ground because again, you're sharing children. Like you can't and the sad thing is it's kind of like one of those things where you can't just wipe out the existence of like who somebody is, and especially when half of their genealogy is within them, right? Like thank goodness for my mother for not judging me based off of my father and how poorly he treated her during their marriage. I was a product of domestic abuse, so like I mean like it was thankfully it wasn't kind of that behavior, and my grandparents never met me even if they might have seen similar mannerisms of my behavior. It like I was still fresh grown, right? Like I'm freshly grown. I'm not him. That doesn't, just because I might have a similar, a similar approach or delivery of something, does not mean that my intentions are ill intentions the way that his was. Like there's a difference, and especially when they're youthful, you're starting with like a you're starting with a blank slate. You get to hone them, you get to encourage them. But I always like to stay in the parenting perspective of allowing them to kind of teach them how to harness their own light, their own interests. Like there's a reason why I never thought I would be a soccer mother, because it didn't, like I've never played like I've never really played soccer. Would not consider myself, I'm not as familiarized with the sport, but that happens to be what my kid absolutely love and adores, and good for him.
Mhm.
So I am learning, like I am allowing my child to teach me like new lessons and new discoveries, because it's of his interest, not mine. Not promoting, the pink teddy bear on bestowing that onto a 4-year-old when they're still, figuring out who they are. I mean, that's the exact age that you try on different characters to figure out what fits and what doesn't fit. And I mean, children need to be protected from grooming, like
Oh
100%,
yeah.
because
And
they're
and
so
being
influential.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a portion of parents out there these days that look at it as, what can I do to make sure that this child is loyal to me? Not what can I do to make sure this child grows up to be a good child? What can I do to prepare this child, for life? It's what can I do to make sure that they're, latched on to me and not the other parent, which is really sad to see. Because it
Well,
should only be about
100%.
raising a child who's a competent young individual.
Well, that's a child being raised by the trauma, not being raised for the child's sake and for the world, right? So that's the complete difference, is because it's that role reversal. That parent did not resolve some of the traumas that created that void and that attention seeking behavior and that need to be attached. It gives me the vibes of that one illness. What is it called when they're,
Oh, Stockholm syndrome?
yes, like a little bit of that, but a little bit of the also when
Marchand syndrome or something like that?
I
It's where
it's
they
the
make the child sick so that the child's dependent
correct.
on them.
Yeah,
There's that
yeah.
famous mother who had it with her daughter in the wheelchair, yeah.
Yeah, and so in that, and it's kind of, it gives me those vibrations of like when you're raising the child to like have those exact strong opinions, to enforce them into it, to that, but also so that please don't leave me, you have to take care of me type of thing. And the fact of the matter is the kid's going to have free choice when they become adults. So it's like they may decide they did. I mean, even if you did it right, they don't always decide they like you.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
it doesn't even really matter. I know that my daughter at one point had said to me, she's like, "I take dad, but I'm not going to take you." And I'm like, "Wait a second, I promised I would behave myself. Like, I don't understand. Why would you not want me?" And but at the same time, I didn't take it out. I could have taken it out of her. I could have pish-poshed her opinion away, and instead I said, "You know what? That's great for me to know, so I can plan my retirement and my transition on my way out." And it's not her it never was her responsibility to make some of those decisions in the first place, right? And a lot of times I think in some cultures, especially with my husband's culture, it's the mindset of, like the child takes care of first the parents take care of the child and then the child takes care of the parent. And in a lot of cases, that's not necessarily how it is. And sadly, in today's time, especially with massive cancel culture promoting, people cut ties and lose complete connection. And it's like you can't cancel someone from existing. Like that's just because you disagree with them and you may have hardships. There's unity and compassion and things and having grace for people in their healing process that we have to go to, if we can get to that place, depending on what it is. Now, you, through this whole experience, you even had you literally had moments where you almost died from this entire process. Can you paint us a picture of what the hell happened? Like, how did this turn
Yeah.
into massive extremes to the point where it brought you to the brink?
Well, so leading up to her rupturing the marriage, I had spinal fusion surgery about 18 months before that. So I was in the bed recovering for most of a year, laying in
Mm.
bed because I couldn't do anything. And then she started kind of ramping things up. But when she finally ruptured it, um, I started investigating. I saw that she had transferred like $10,000 to herself 3 days before that. And then a month before that, she had transferred $16,000 to her mom. So, already dealing with
There's
this
planning money.
marital rupture.
That's planning and move money for sure. There's no question about that.
Well, that's let me raid the bank before I leave the bank kind of behavior. And
Right.
then she increased her spending by 40% once I went to treatment and just started playing hardball. And once I was dealing with all that, I lost 40 pounds within about 6 weeks.
Mm.
My resting heart rate was 100 beats per minute, and that was resting. My blood pressure was 180 over 120, and that was even on clonidine or other blood pressure medications to try and get it down. I almost died from a stroke, not to mention being suicidal and, driving your car and thinking about, veering into oncoming traffic.
Right.
I almost died in a lot of different ways, and still to this day, I kind of feel like bloated roadkill on the side of the road, but I'm still here and kicking at least, so I'm doing something right.
Well, and what I think is really fascinating, and now I want to kind of start going into the Cray app, because what I find interesting is from this experience, and I mean, there's so much material we could have gone into and complexities, and I've already found out some of the backdoor family information as well, that I won't bring up today. But it doesn't mean I may not bring it up later. But I mean, I've already heard some of the backdoor family material, and the fact is it's like what I really love is that when we're able to step out of our own victimhood, right? When we're able to step out of this is what was done to me, this is the experience that I had, it creates material content and learning lessons and tools for people out in the world to basically, like, you made the lemonade out of the lemons by creating the Cray app. And what I love about it is it's a methodic way of being able to take mental health with not just diagnosis from DSM, but also taking into accountability of just even some of the traumatic experiences, like what might have created a narcissist or any of those different things. And it creates the red flags for people, so that, like, when they're starting to date, they can actually kind of vet the person that they're thinking about making a committed relationship. Can you explain to me, like, how the app came about, how it works, how it we already kind of know how it came about from your experience,
Yeah.
but can you explain a little bit more detail of how it functions?
Sure. There's four main pieces to it. The Cray score, which is red flags in a relationship. Then there's the schemer score, which is if someone's being deceptive or manipulative. And then there's a catfish check, which is a phone number lookup. So you make sure the person's not using a fake number. And then there's a background check, which is a legal history check in the state of your choosing. The app is basically questions or statements that you respond to, and it gives you a report at the end. You go down the
Mm.
Cray score route, you answer questions that are about that. I think there's 78 total, but you can do a shorter version that's 10, or a medium version that's 33. And then the schemer score is its own track where you go answer those questions or items. And it gives you a report at the end. The Cray score and schemer score are free, because after what I went through, I made the determination from the beginning that I was going to try and get this into as many hands as possible. And if I was charging people money for the Cray score or schemer score, I couldn't do that. So I wanted to make sure that I kept those parts free. The only stuff I charge for is stuff I have to pay for. Um, you can't make an impact on dating safety if you're creating, barriers to entry.
Right, that makes total sense.
You know something? If you're listening to these conversations and thinking, yeah, I want more spaces like this in my life, That's exactly why we built the Kapitol community. It's where we keep the conversations going, exploring the emotional and energetic pulse of life, sharing tools for growth, bringing in new perspectives, and opening up the wisdom window during Soul Talks with Abby. If that sounds like your kind of space, you can learn more about it at capitolhealth.com. It's the place where growth keeps unfolding. At just $26 a month, come join the Kapitol community, where wisdom grounds you and awareness helps you rise.
Now, this app is available right now. It's out now, and people can
Yes.
go and pull up their phone, and and Cray comes from crazy, right? Like like a play on
Yeah, it
words.
comes from Craig, because, and I decided to make that the company name because, you know, it's not Cray Cray, it's Cray, because everyone's a little crazy, right? We all have a little bit of crazy in us. But it was also a term that people understood the meaning of, and I felt it was something that could pull people in to kind of judge the product based on the name and then realize what a great product it is. Because, this is a product that is non-traditional. I didn't take a traditional approach. I made some dark humor or edgy humor wrapped around it so that it took the edges off of a topic that no one wants to talk about, no one wants to address, no one wants to engage in. And let's turn it into something that we can have these conversations where people will answer the questions and they will gain insights and they will start living a better life where they're not ending up with these people who are abusive or substance abuse or emotionally abusive or physically abusive or don't have all their crap together.
Well, and even more importantly, I think it's also ingenious because some people today don't even know some of the experiences that are happening in today's world, right? Like, I mean, I met my husband 3 weeks before my 20th birthday, right? So we have been together for, oh my gosh, I think it's like 22 years this spring or something like that.
Wow,
So
good for you
I would
guys.
thank you. Like, it's a lot of work. I mean, trust me, it's the best love-hate relationship you ever have. But like, but it's one of those things where we are fortunate. We are fortunate enough to be able to have make it this far. And honestly, when I think about it, it's been a blur. Like, I mean, the emotions haven't changed, but we are also very soul connected, very like twin flame empowered. Like there's a lot of energetics behind our connection. But that thankfully we have on our side. But that aside, I don't know. I personally have no idea. Like I have clients that are in dating world right now, and swipe left or swipe right, like just to hit their match, or like, and you go into this world of like, it's different. The world has changed. I mean, like, because when I'm speaking back into 2004, for Christ's sake. Like 2004 is like, we didn't have some of the technologies. We didn't have the smartphones. We didn't have, like, people had conversations. People could still say that they met in bars and it was an okay thing because people talk to each other, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
now everyone's looking at their phones when they're at the bar. They don't even talk to each other.
right.
And social
Or
skills
they're
aren't
on
even,
Tinder. They're on
yeah.
Tinder and they're like, it's all the hookup stuff. Like I have a cousin of mine who's in his early 20s, and he would love to have like a real connected like relationship, but then it's the influence of his generation was always looking for hookups, to the point where like that's not where he was looking. And so therefore it left him in the fuck, what do I do now? Because I don't even know how to find someone. So like, but then you bring in the terms of the gaslighting. Like when you bring up schemer, I'm like, oh, what? I don't understand what that means, because you hear of catfishing, you hear of gaslighting, and some of these older generations don't even know what those things even mean
They're
because they
walking,
haven't had that
yeah.
experiencing.
Well, and that's the scary thing. I think I've noticed that there's this huge trend online that the tide has shifted in women's favor to the point that women have thousands of options online now. And
Mm.
what has happened is it seems like there's a portion of women who now use this as their income or as their way to get free meals. And so men are getting used as financial as a bank account essentially,
Yeah.
and their hearts are getting broken in the process. And then the good guys get jaded because they got taken advantage of, in the beginning because they were a good guy showing up doing good guy things. And so this creates the tool
Gentlemanly, like
set.
healthy masculine things. That's the worst
Yes,
part. Like healthy
yes.
masculine things. Yeah.
Yes, I was one of those people, and I'm now jaded to the point where I haven't been dating for the last, however long, because after what I went through and coming back into the dating scene, I don't want to be involved in that. I mean, it's not a very rewarding or safe environment for most people these days. And everything is pretty much you meet someone's representative, and that's who they're going to show you. And that's, the facade you get for the first however long in the dating period. And that's not really a great environment for good people to date in
Well,
because
I
you're going
mean,
to get hurt.
just even think about like all of the just how makeup is done today, right? Like cuz like even makeup today, some of like talent, first of all, let me just say, wow, what great artistry that some of these people have the ability to, because like, I mean, damn. I mean, I feel bad. I mean, I even feel bad for some of the women out there that looked a little bit butchy and they always kind of had a little bit more of a masculine look. And now in the transgender movement, like you can't fuck those poor women that don't really like that always had a little bit of that guy look now get stuck into people thinking that they're transgender because and that's not fair, like that's just not fair just on a woman's standpoint. But what I really like there's a lot of skills in the makeup persuasion, but then it's like when you go home with that person and then you see them the next morning, what face are you getting, type of thing,
I
like
think yeah, it's scary. I mean, because from a man's standpoint, this is what I look like every day. I might
right.
not wear the glasses, I might not wear the hat, but this is what I look like. I don't put anything on, take it or leave it. This is what I look like.
Hmm.
With, some women out there, you don't know what they look like, and you won't have an idea what they look like until you're maybe, 2 to 4 to 6 months in where they feel comfortable sleeping over or not
Right.
having their makeup on around you because there's such that like societal pressure for women to be perfect and look perfect and have everything
Right.
be perfect for a man.
Well, and there's also I think it also has to do with like the comfortability of being able to be a human in front of somebody else, right? Because there's a vulnerability factor, right? So it's like, you know, and this is a lot of the work that I end up doing with my company and with my community is really focusing on harnessing who you are so that you feel safe, you feel okay. But it always goes down to deep rooted trauma that didn't get resolved, that hasn't been addressed, hasn't been healed. And so the more confident that you are in your body and being able to be makeupless, right? Like, like I don't really put a lot of makeup on my face anymore because I've learned so much about skincare treatment for my daughter because she's 17. And so, but at the same time, I also like to stay fully aware of what's happening in the world today so that I'm not naive and I'm not I can still be able to give the lessons of parenting to keep them with their moral values and be able to have her enter the world with her self-worth and being able to be a confident woman so that she isn't easily manipulated or easy influenced, or when those red flags come up, she uses her intuitive abilities to be able to decipher between the two of them. But it's like if I remain in this point of I don't understand you children, that's a weird generation, da 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 da, one, that's egotistical because you never know when somebody will actually like enter into that world, because a lot of people like you were in a relationship, a committed relationship for over 8 years, and then boom, it hit you like a ton of bricks and everything changed. And then it's like, and so I mean, I don't think that you were thinking that you were going to be back in dating world at this age, at this time, at like those types of things. Like you were thinking like growing old together, retirement, like all those different types of mindsets. I like to be in the know and be aware of like, my daughter will come home. My daughter is 17, my son is 9 years old. I still have a good 10 years to deal with to get him into the 19 zone. And that's even just the beginning of dating. So it's like, and if the world has already changed this much, I don't know what the F is going to happen in
Yeah.
15 years. Like, it kind of terrifies me, especially the way society is. So I love the fact that you've created this app and you've done something with it. But I also, it's like, what do you think about, where do you think some of society went wrong in where like image and, like you said, expressed that some of the women today are kind of really just looking for a bank account to spend money? Because I have seen TikToks where there are girls out there that will not date a man unless they make a certain amount of money. And I don't
Yeah.
necessarily know where that came from.
My guess is, and this is from someone that's been single in three different periods, the last two being 10 years apart. I think it's a mix of things. I think what you had is a large population of young women, underage women, girls, going on social media without guardrails.
Hmm.
And what ended up happening is you have a bunch of predatory men who are horny, who fed into whatever echo chamber that girl created in her social media, and started realizing this girl, a young girl who has nothing being taught to her by her parents or any other, adult, is
Or
realizing,
doesn't
hey,
want to
I can get,
listen, or doesn't want to listen to her
yeah,
parents
and
because she
any
wants
of
her
the
own independence
explanation.
too. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, she starts realizing she can make money very easily from online people. And so
Yeah.
she's now incentivized to do things for money, not for because I like this person or because they seem like a good partner. They chase the money now instead. And so what I think has
Yeah.
happened is you then had all these OnlyFans women, go into that industry that further implants the idea that men are only good for money. And then what do you have happen? They keep diving deeper into that, and it's just created this echo chamber of women online that now only see men as financial, rewards. And it's unfortunate because the women who are looking for these men are looking for like 0.0001% of the population, and they're not even trained in how to keep a partner that is that 0.0001% of the population, and how they should be good for a partner that is that 0.0001% of the
Or
population.
even some of the problematics that happen. It's like you hear, some of the people that do have the means to be able to do that. I think, I can't remember the first name, but the guy Tate that comes to mind,
Oh,
and how
yeah.
he just he's like extreme womanizer, has very extreme philosophies on what a woman should be, how they should be behaving, how they should be interacting with people. And he just goes through women like used toys. Like, I mean, they just from one to the next. And it's astonishing, because it's like, okay, and this doesn't mean, like, yes, with wealth can become bad behavior. That does not mean that all people with money like with wealth are bad. This does not mean that they're evil, but it does increase the temptation to which they have influence or access to, right? And it's the integrity, it's the moral upbringing, it's the integrity of the individual. It's being able to live a pure, good life and make those decisions, and also be reflective of how your actions affect other people, being compassionate humans, right? But like, and sadly, I do hate to say that, as wealth increase, they say more money, more problems, right? But it doesn't have to have more problems. It's a choice. It's a conscious choice. But you will find that, when people do have access to that type of wealth, or they have that access, they get more access to more bad crude behavior, for sure.
If you're a bad, it's that saying, you are the company you keep. And that's
Mhm.
true. Just like, power will only corrupt those in power if they, in the beginning, are a person who has no moral compass. Like Andrew Tate, that's a guy who sex traffics women and
Yeah.
manipulates women and then takes their passports once they're in a foreign country and locks them there. I mean, that's like the worst of the worst. And it's unfortunate because, men are being taught this toxic masculinity and these, alpha male. Like, it's ridiculous, to think
Yeah.
that these men who have no moral compass and who have no place to be teaching these other young men how to behave.
Yeah, 100%. And well, and it's like you when I see people like that in the world, I'm like, oh my God, because it kind of tells you a little bit about some of what their exposure to some of their trauma actually was to get them to that extreme level of what's going on with them. And then, and it's different things, like when you're dealing with forms of narcissism, that, like you have a window period of when you can actually address it, try and ratify it before it actually becomes more of actual permanency, right? I believe the age cutoff for when it really solidifies is around the age of 24, is what I've heard, which I've done research for, is like there is the capacity to be able to salvage and not have it head into that. But it's one, if the person is willing, and two, like once it gets to a certain point, it's kind of like, unless that person really wants to commit to a full fundamental like rebuilding structure. And a lot of people have a hard time being able to address the trauma because it can be so emotional. I mean, you can go through the physical purging, you can go through the sweats, you can go through the chills, you can go through the head pains, the extreme strain pressure of just releasing emotions. I mean, emotions are intense, and they can, especially when you're dealing with different various levels of trauma. I mean, like we've all been seeing what's been going on with a lot of the Diddy type related things, especially when it comes to, like, oh, look, here's the access. You saw like basically videos on how he used status and power and funds to influence and pressure people. And even though these people still chose, it's like and I can't speak for those individuals because some of them seem to either feel pressured into making those decisions, like they didn't feel like they had an alternative, either that, or it was like they were either being threatened or influenced to do so. So it made them feel like they had no choice. Kind of like, during the COVID times where people actually had choice on whether to get vaccinated, but then, people had their jobs threatened. And so therefore they're like, I didn't have a choice. And it's like, actually you did, you could have changed job. It would have been a harder choice, but you still had a choice. So there, it goes into that ground of where it gets really murky and really disgusting. And I hate talking about subjects like this because it feels so dirty. Like it makes me want to go take a shower. Because I'm like, because I'm all into healing and the positivity and like, let's get the samples and heal people, like type of thing. But the fact is that I feel like if we don't have these conversations and we don't bring them to states of awareness, then people are living in their constant bubbles to where they're not paying attention to what's happening around them.
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges right now is you have all this pedophilia stuff going on with the Epstein stuff and other stuff that's out there. And there's a portion of the population that wants to ignore it like it doesn't exist. And then there's another
Right.
portion of the population that wants to hit it directly head on and blow it open. And there's kind of this battle going on right now between those two sides.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that no one should hide in the shadows committing atrocities like that. So I'm all for these people getting exposed. But it's unfortunate we have such a system built around them that something like this just doesn't naturally come out. I think part of it is due to the enormous wealth gap between the top 0.00001% and everyone else. These
Yeah.
are people who live in a different world where they look at other humans as pawns in their chessboard, to play.
Well, and some people don't. I think there's the word cognitive dissonance has been thrown around a lot in the last couple of years, and where some people don't either want to get into that conversation because it makes them too uncomfortable. And and the fact is that like people don't usually understand they don't understand things that or they don't believe in things that they can't fully understand, right? It creates that fear, it creates confusion. And it's the same, it's no different than learning a new language, right? A new language is unfamiliar, you have to navigate through, you have to study, you have to really kind of dive in, right? This is no different than learning someone's culture. Like, it just takes a little bit of effort, right? But you do have to take off the blinders to it. You do have to listen to life experiences, not always listening to news sources, not always listening to people in power, or people that have the control, but also doing the research to be able to like connect the dots, figure out where it's coming from. Because I really do feel that a lot of the world today is looking at the middle ground of they're looking at the middle ground to actually investigate. Like, it's like, it doesn't matter what side of the fence that you're on. There is a large population that want the same thing. They want the truth. They want access. They want to know what's the hell's going on. And the sad part is I was having a conversation with someone today that I basically had said to them that, it's like, I'm sick and tired of having all the congressional hearings that basically go fucking nowhere, right? It's all the
The closed door
conversation.
hearings.
Yes. And on top of it, it's like, even the ones where you get to watch it, you notice how they get to banter at each other. They get to ask all these questions. They get to like try and prove their point from whatever direction. It doesn't matter which side. That's just how it is. And then what ends up happening is there's no yeses and there's no there's no accountabilities. There's no admittance at fault. And I was explaining to the person I was speaking to today that when they admit fault, that opens them up to lawsuits. That opens you up to like, and we're not talking little baby lawsuits. We're talking like massive, like going after conglomerate companies. We're talking going after the power structure. And so people always have to be very cautious, in making sure they use terms like allegedly to protect themselves. Even like in podcasting forum, if someone was to make a grandiose statement, you have to say allegedly, so that you're legally keeping yourself in check and you're not having to risk yourself in that nature. But I find it like, there's so many power structures that are the power dynamics that are going on. And I really do feel that the people, humanity, the regular man, right? It doesn't matter how much wealth and power they have, but the regular, like all of us humans are really starting to basically reach out to pull our power back in and to really pull back our freedoms and pulling back to say, no, this is my choice. This is who I am. This is how I choose to live. And you cannot define how or what that looks like for me. And it's like, it's a beautiful process, but it's also, like I said, very messy, very we're in a progressive movement right now. We're in a very progressive time in the world, and it doesn't matter what side of the fence that you live on. We're in it regardless. It's kind of like we went back to the 60s into the 70s when that was huge. Like, that was a huge thing. And this is not a short time. This is like we're in the middle of the 10-year period, the decade period of us going through this experience. I'm hoping we're like halfway through or at least a little bit past that. But I think there's a lot of big things that have to keep hitting and people have to keep standing up, not forcefully, not aggressively, but standing in their power, standing within their boundaries, and making sure that they stick with integrity, because we are having a lack of integrity societal problem right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, that and the A word, accountability. I like that
Accountability.
everyone is sticking with the accountability for what's happened because, there's a lot of redacted files that are coming out and people are trying to get away with behavior that no one should be getting away with. So
Mm-hmm.
to see a lot of people, I'm on Reddit a lot and I see a lot of the posts. It's a lot of people foaming at the mouth for accountability. And it's nice to see because I feel like there's been a huge lack of that in our society for so long. And it's great that the cover is getting blown open on this
Yeah.
because then it means that maybe people will start getting held accountable for this kind of crap and we can take down that kind of system that, keeps this whole thing going.
100%. And it's worldwide, by the way. It's world. And if you don't believe
Yeah.
that it's worldwide, start looking. start looking, because it's
Yeah.
not just the United States, it's absolutely 100% worldwide. Well, I need people to figure out, how do they get a hold of you? How do they look you up? Where do they find you? Or, and like, how do they go ahead and just open up their phone and download the Cray app so they can start making use to the madness right now?
Well, our website is cray.app, CRAY period APP. If you look in either the Apple App Store or Google Play, you can look us up under Cray dash dating safety. And the app's been out for about 6 months now, I think.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on the Capitol Life and bringing some uncomfortable conversation and enlightenment to things that actually need light on it, just so that we can stay informed and keep realizing that not all of us are at the level of healing that we are at, and so we have to remain to have grace and compassion for others, without the judgment of where they are in their healing journey. But I really appreciate you being able to methodically have this conversation and bring it to light, and also for doing what you've done by creating an app to help others, and just from your trauma, being able to create something for others so that they could have a chance of not having to have some of the experiences. I know that it would have been amazing if my mother had had something like that when she was selecting a father for me.
Getting me teary-eyed a little bit, so I appreciate that. I really do appreciate that, because the last 18 months were a lot of pain, but I told myself that this was not going to be something that happened to me with no purpose. So that's what I did, is I made a purpose. So I appreciate it. And
Amazing.
thank you for
What a
having me,
blessing.
Abby, and supporting the app.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today on the Capitol Life, where we talk about all the things that life brings. Join me next Saturday as we dive into even more. Remember to take care of yourself, because you're somebody's everything.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube and Facebook at Kapitol Health. That's Kapitol Health. Please share with your friends and family. The Capitol Life is available on all podcasting platforms except Pandora. Our goal at the Capitol Life is to provide a safe place to get information when it comes to your health and wellness, especially when dealing with all of life's phases. Remember to take care of yourself, because you're somebody's everything.